Good evening on Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. This is number 19, I believe, in terms of the NFL exit reports that I'm doing. Today's show will be the Chicago Bears. If this is your first one, I encourage you to go back and look at all the other ones. It's a process-oriented review of each team, why I went ahead and made some of the decisions I made, why some of them were flawed, why many of them turned out to be the right decisions. And I've had a lot of quality guests on the show. Some of them are solo because I've got a lot of things to say and I want to get them out, and I know where I'm going, especially like this one with the Chicago Bears. But I get a lot of good stuff out of the guests that I've had, people who are very attuned not only to the NFL, but to these particular teams that I have them with. So go ahead, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and check out some of the other videos that I've done. As for the Bears, a team in disarray for sure at the end of 2021. They were going to undergo a new coaching change. The GM, Ryan Pace, abysmal job as a GM, to be honest. He sacrificed a lot of draft choices. Some of the players that they've drafted are no longer with the team. He drafted some injury risk along the offensive line. Justin Fields is not a mistake. It's really the rest of the draft that's been more of a mistake. And the team itself has undergone a lot of changes as well due to trades. There were a couple of key players traded in the last couple of years due to those bad draft decisions, and also due to coaching, to be honest. After Vic Fangio left defensive coordinator, when he became the Denver Broncos head coach, we've seen slippage just a little bit year by year. And last year we saw major slippage with the new coaching staff. So, like I said, we've had major changes, and some of the major changes included the coach, Matt Eberflus. He came from the Indianapolis organization. Fresh start for him here, worth a try. Defensive coach, which is something that we may get into a little bit more in the offseason. Some of the defensive new coaches have not caught on as quickly as some of the offensive coaches because it's really becoming a more offensive-minded league. The problem I had with Matt coming in is I worried about the fact that they played such a soft zone in Indianapolis, allowing usually between 66 and an amazing 70%. And if he brought those soft zone schemes to Chicago, I thought that would be a problem for a defense that was lacking in star power. Why was it lacking in star power? Khalil Mack gone, Akeem Hicks gone. I think one or two others were either traded or let go. Some of the veterans were let go. And so they were, in a way, starting new in terms of the defense. Good news, bad news in terms of the 2022 draft. Some of the things I liked, the first two choices were properly rated. I believe it was Gordon at cornerback, Brisker at safety. I thought that would jumpstart a little bit the secondary. Good choices there, two choices right off the bat there. Of course, they had a lot of other needs, and I wasn't sure they were going to get to all of them, especially with the number of draft picks they had. But Chicago did a neat thing, something we haven't seen done at all from this organization. They turned 3 draft picks in rounds 4 through 8, day 3 draft picks. They turned 3 into 8. So they had a draft of 11 players and 8 on day 3 of the 2022 draft. Unfortunately, I didn't like who they drafted. I certainly wasn't upset that they went ahead and drafted 4 offensive linemen. That's an area of extreme need if you look back at the stat sheet from the previous year. 59 sacks allowed in 2021. That's horrible. Fields, as a rookie quarterback, deserves some of the blame, but not all of the blame for that. My ratings of the 4 guys that they drafted along the offensive line, only one of which was rated. So basically, I thought they could have had 3 better offensive line choices. Velus Jones was their top wide receiver taken. Big mistake to me, and as they call it in draft circles, an overaged wide receiver, I believe 27 years old, right around that area, and not even a polished wide receiver. You'd think at 26, 27 years of age at Tennessee, that he would have been a little bit more polished, but he brought more kick return skill in for the organization rather than actually pass catching skill. Work in progress at that age, not the way you want to go if you're the Chicago Bears. So I had some major problems in that area. So now we go through and I'm creating my process. I'm going through the keys. I'm going through every game in August. And these were the keys that I came up with when I was putting them on my team sheets. How does the defense slip without some of its stars? In my estimation, it would slip. Maybe sacks would go down a little bit, but still be okay. They had Roquan Smith. They had a couple of others. They had success in the pass. The pass defense would rely either on rookies starting or rookies being nickel cornerbacks and safeties. And of course, worried about the soft zone. I expected the D to slip. New coaches. I like it when new coaches have early bye weeks. I discussed this in summer series with Las Vegas Chris, with my friend Ted. Basically, look at Philadelphia from 2021. Nick Sirianni, a coach that was really ascending to the top spot ahead of his time, looked lost in the first 5-6 weeks, had an early bye week, took a self-portrait of the team, took a look at what they did right, what they did wrong, changed everything, and Philly became not only a playoff team in 2021, but a Super Bowl team in 2022. That doesn't usually ascend that fast, but here you have a week 13 full bye week. If there are any adjustments to be made for a coach that has never been a head coach, it really wasn't going to be made on a week-to-week basis. There's just too much stuff going on, too much thinking going on for the coach trying to assess everything and run a team week to week to week. That week 13 bye was a little too late for me. And finally, I still perceive right now in his development, or certainly at the beginning of 2022, that Justin Fields was more of a one-read quarterback. Tremendous running skill. I projected him as somebody, because of his stature, if he breaks away, if you don't get him down, it's a big play waiting to happen. I really did believe that they could complete a lot of 30, 40, 50-yard passes with the arm strength of Justin Fields and his ability to get away from some would-be tacklers. The problem is, if it's not there for the first read, he's taken off and running, or he's throwing late into coverage. He doesn't have that timing yet. He doesn't see the tight windows in the NFL to thread the needle in them. He's not seeing the big picture yet. Unfortunately, that was another concern for me. And so basically, by the time it came down to make a decision on season wins, knowing that Minnesota and Green Bay had better rosters and Detroit, in my opinion, was improved, there was only one way to go with Chicago, and that was all in as one of my top 5 season win underplays. Some people said they got 7.5 to start. That seemed pretty high to me. I had plays under 7, under 6.5, and I even took a very juicy price under 5 season wins, alternate lines, because I didn't think the Bears were going to win more than 5 games. We talked about why with Fields. We talked about the offensive line, a learning year for the new staff. I looked at their schedule. I looked at the pacing. I saw maybe 3, if lucky, 4 times they would be favored the entire season. I just didn't see where they would go based on all the numbers, all my projected stats, 65, 66% projected pass D, 49, I believe it was 49, 48 sacks that I thought that they would allow, and a roster that was still not great in a lot of areas, especially at offensive line, and losing veteran leadership on the defense. So once again, summing it up, it was an under year for me with the Bears. And it was interesting because they pulled an upset out of the gate. And I put, as you can see in the banner, upset in parentheses, because as I told people on the podcast at the beginning of the year, they were in a very favorable week 1 spot. They played the San Francisco 49ers, who almost made the Super Bowl the year before. 49ers, again, they had a little bit concern health-wise. Unfortunately, the 49ers always seem to have a concern health-wise. And they were starting Trey Lance with an amazing upside, but a guy who had basically had one quality start in 3 years of action. Didn't play much at all as a rookie in San Francisco. Didn't play at all his last year in college because of COVID, shut the program down. And his program they didn't throw a lot of passes to begin with. So Trey Lance was learning on the job. This was not a good spot for him to learn on the job on the road at Chicago, with slippage in the defense, but still a couple of veterans there. I thought this would be closer to a pick'em type game, according to my metrics, and Chicago did pull the upset week 3. Then they go ahead and beat Houston. Altogether in the first 6 games, the Bears were 2-4. And at the time that they were 2-4, I still saw a lot of problems at that particular point. Look at their sack ratio, 11 sacks for them, 23 sacks against them. So in 6 games, they already had a -12 sack ratio. My power rating, which is adjusted week to week based on performance metrics and so on, it wasn't going up. Of course, 2-4 it wasn't going up, of course, but did it go down? Yeah, it actually went down. They were the 30th or 31st power rated team for me. They actually slipped 2 points from the opening power rating, even with wins over San Francisco and, of course, Houston. The more telling stat, and this is why you really have to read between the lines and understand what a team is doing, is the coaches did not trust Justin Fields. First 5 games, when the average number of passes is roughly 33, 34 passes per game, unless you're Tom Brady, then he's throwing 45 passes a game, Joe Burrow 40, and so on and so forth. But, let's use 34 passes per game. Justin Fields, 88 passes in 5 games, 17 and a half passes per game. Even when behind in these games, they ran either because Justin Fields didn't see anybody open, or they tried a lot of first down and second down runs to make it easier on Fields because he hadn't learned the offense yet. The coaching staff was new. That to me was a real telling sign that this team and the staff wasn't ready to unleash Fields. They didn't feel comfortable with the offensive line. They didn't feel comfortable with their wide receivers. A lot of problems there. And so to me, that meant that things were probably going to get worse before they got better, even though you look at that Monday Night Football game, week 7, where did that come from? They beat New England at New England on Monday Night Football. I believe the game was at New England. Let me double check that. Yes, it was at New England that they beat them on Monday Night Football. Now, at the time, and certainly in retrospect, I thought that was more an indictment of New England's weakness against running quarterbacks, and it certainly was. But still, the way they beat them, maybe something good was going to happen. But no, that wasn't the case. They had that +3 turnover ratio against New England. It was a flat turnover ratio against Dallas, and they lost 49-29. Dallas just smoked them. And after that, things got worse. They did not get better. And why did they get worse? Because the Chicago GM and the Chicago staff said, we're giving up. And how did they tell you that they were giving up? They traded Roquan Smith, one of the stars of the defense, certainly their star on defense, and one of the better defensive players in all of the NFL. They traded him one day after the Dallas game on Halloween, October 31st, 9 games left. And lo and behold, as it turned out, Chicago did not win another game. Yes, they went 0-10 down the stretch, 0-9 without Roquan Smith. And I can read you some stats that really prove the fact that Chicago, they have a lot of ground to make up. Their leading receiver had fewer than 500 passing receiving yards in the entire year, 493. Their tight end had 544, but that comes out to basically not much more than 30 per game. Yes, the aerial attack wasn't working, not only because Fields didn't throw the ball a lot, but they didn't have trust in any of their wide receivers as well. In the end, Fields got sacked a whole bunch of times. We're talking 58 times Justin Fields got sacked this year. So things didn't get better. Without Smith in the lineup, pass D skied back up to 65, 66%. The run D, they allowed 5 yards per carry and an amazing 153 or 157 yards per game. That's just outlandishly bad. And on top of that, they averaged fewer than 1 sack per game without Roquan Smith. In fact, they had 7 sacks in their last 9 games from the defensive side of the ball. So let's face it, the Bears hit all my benchmarks or didn't hit any benchmarks at all. Their win total, they didn't win 5 games. I collected in the under 7, under 6.5, and under 5. And to me, the way I went about assessing the coaching staff, the draft, my seasonal keys all the way along, it pointed toward an under and a bad year. And it got even worse when they made the trades during the season, made that trade. So with all that in mind, there's nowhere to go but up, right? The coaching staff will be in year 2. Maybe they'll figure some things out. Certainly they need some roster improvements. I applaud the fact that with the Roquan Smith trade, they added a couple more draft choices. I think the Bears are doing the right thing by stockpiling the roster, and maybe they can coach some of the draftees up that didn't have very good years this past year. Velus Jones didn't do really much of anything in the offensive line. The one that was rated was starting, but obviously it didn't pan out. He wasn't ready to be a true NFL starter in his rookie season. And he was only rated my 11th best tackle to begin with. But that means he has starting ability down the road, but he was forced to start right away because what other options did they have? The other 3 were reserves, as expected. So this team has a lot of draft choices, but they have to do better with their draft choices. Let's face it, they have to get a more rated talent. I'm disappointed that they've traded away or let go so many veterans, starting with Khalil Mack and then Roquan Smith this year. Where's that veteran leadership? Where's that leadership going to come through? I do think Justin Fields still has upside. I think he'll learn to read defenses a little bit better. He has a rocket for an arm. If they can give him a little bit more talent at wide receiver, if they can give him a bell cow free agent offensive tackle to help them out and, again, draft more effectively, running game is fine. They have to ramp up the sacks or the secondary is just not going to be able to hold their receivers down long enough. 20 defensive sacks. And like I said, 7 in the last 9 games. That's not enough. And if I were them, I'd assess the coaching staff too, because I was a little worried that this coaching staff seemed a little overmatched. Not all offensive coordinators or defensive coordinators are great head coaches. And I'm not ready to pull the plug on Eberflus as far as his first year. That's unfair. We need to see a second year and maybe even parts of a third year. But right now, there wasn't as buy-in. I just finished the New York Giants preview with Chris Farley. Chris is a great NFL analyst, handicapper, and has his pulse on the New York Giants. And the two of us, if you go back to the New York Giant video, you could see where buy-in was immediate with the new coaching staff of the New York Giants. But for teams like Denver and for this team like Chicago, we didn't get that immediate buy-in. So Bears have a lot left to do. I don't know if I'll be as bearish on them because we're not going to see high season win totals next year, but I'm certainly not running to the window to say the Bears are going to be great next year. They have a lot of work to do. That's it for my 2022 exit report on the Chicago Bears. I'm going to be taking a little break. It's the season is over. The next video won't come out for about a week. As my wife and I leave town on a little R&R. But when we come back, a lot more from the NFC North. We've got Detroit with Las Vegas Chris. We've got a special guest with the Minnesota Vikings coming up, and I hope to have a special guest for the Green Bay Packers as well. Always nice to share the stage on some of these season autopsy reports, if you want to call it. So thank you again for listening. Please check out my other videos, and hopefully I'll be providing more content in the off season because it's never too early to prepare for the NFL. We'll see you next time, and take care.